Hi, this is Tamara Kelly from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Shell Stitch Crochet Duster, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. This pattern comes in 5 sizes, ranging from extra small to 6X. You'll be able to pick the size based on the fit you desire and make the sleeves in your favorite style and length, tapered or straight. To make this pattern, I used a USL 8mm crochet hook and Katia Azteca in the gray colorway. You'll also want to have some stitch markers handy. I do recommend that you do your best to print out or create a copy of this pattern and circle the size that you're making throughout the pattern so that you make sure you're always following the correct numbers. Let's take a quick look at the finished Shell Stitch Crochet Duster. Here you can see some pictures of me modeling the finished duster. The body of this pattern is made in one piece and then seamed along the sides. Then we add the sleeves and some edging. There are lots of opportunities here for customization, so be sure to look at the written pattern if you'd like a vest, short sleeves, or a different style of sleeve. Both tapered and straight sleeve styles are included in the written pattern. The sleeves themselves are worked in turned rounds, keeping the seam straight under the arm. Be sure to use a stitch marker in the first and last stitch of each round for easier crocheting. Let's go ahead and get started with the Shell Stitch Crochet Duster. Alright, so as I mentioned, this pattern starts at the back bottom edge. So we start by chaining, and of course the number we chain depends on the size we're making. For the smallest size, you'd chain 44, for the largest 72. Again, you'll want the written pattern for this one so you can follow along with the exact numbers for your size. But here I'm going to demonstrate the basic stitch pattern, so I've got a small swatch ready to go. After you've done your chaining, we begin by double crocheting in the 5th chain from the hook. So I'm going to yarn over and count the 5th chain out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I prefer to work into the back hump of the chain. For this pattern, I find that it gives a better finished edge when you're all done. But of course, you can work into whichever part you prefer. So you can see here I've made a double crochet, but the 4 chains back here that we skipped are going to count as a skipped chain and a double crochet right here. So I do recommend that you pull up one of those stitch markers and go ahead and mark not the top of the double crochet you made, but rather go ahead and mark the top of that section of chains there. And that will mark the last stitch when you come back the other direction. I'll reinsert my hook, and now we can go back to our instructions. Now we're going to double crochet in the same stitch, and then we work 2 double crochets in the next stitch. 1 and 2. There we go. I need to pull up a little bit more yarn from my ball. Then we are going to skip the next 2 chains, 1 and 2, and then we begin our repeat that takes us most of the way across the row. We work 2 double crochets in each of the next 2 chains. So we go right into that next one. There's 1 and 2, and then 2 in the next. 1 and 2. Then our repeat begins, or rather finishes, I should say, with skipping the next 2 chains, 1, 2, and then we do it again. Double crochet in the next 2. There's 2 in that stitch. We do run through yarn a little quickly on these balls, so if you've got one of those stands for your yarn, it would be super helpful. There we go. Or just go ahead and pull up a whole bunch ahead of time. Now I've got some to play with. I'm going to go ahead and work 2 double crochets in that next stitch. 1, 2, and then of course we finish our repeat by skipping the next 2 stitches. And then we do it again. Now, I've just got a small swatch to demonstrate with here today, but of course you'll have lots of repeats of this all the way across if you're making a full-sized sweater. As I crochet these stitches, I'll point out too that you should absolutely make sure to read the sizes and the measurements for those sizes. So you'll want to base the size of the sweater you're making on the actual measurements, not necessarily what's labeled as extra small or extra large. Don't pick the vanity size, go by the measurements, and that will really help you pick the fit you like. So as you finish your repeats, we make our last repeat, and there should be, of course, 2 stitches left, but it's officially part of our repeat, right? Double crochet twice in those 2 stitches and then skip the next 2. So when we get to the end of the row, we of course need to finish it off. We don't want to leave those hanging. So we're going to put a double crochet right in that very last stitch, like so. And that, on a short scale, is what it should look like when you've finished row 1. So now we're ready to begin row 2. I'm going to start by turning my work, and then I'm going to begin the row by making a chainless starting double crochet in the first stitch. This is what I like to use instead of a chain 3 or of other double crochet substitutes, but you can use whichever you prefer. You can chain 3 instead if that's what you like. To make the chainless starting double crochet, I'm going to pull up a loop to the height of a double crochet, secure the top of the loop with my finger, yarn over with the loop itself, insert my hook right in the top of that first stitch, yarn over, and pull a loop through. I've still got a hold of the top of that loop. It's really important you don't let the loop spin on your hook, or that's where you lose the stitch. We yarn over, pull through the loop and behind the yarn over, and then yarn over again. And finally, we can release that loop and pull through the final 2. So that's how I make that stitch. But again, you can use a chain 3 or a stacked single crochet or a different double crochet substitute if you prefer. And if you'd like a closer look at that stitch, I do have a separate tutorial for it on the YouTube channel. So going back to row 2, after we've got that first double crochet made, we skip the next stitch right there, and then we work 2 double crochets in each of the next 2 stitches and skip the 2 stitches after that. Very familiar, right? So what does that look like? Means basically we're going to put 2 double crochets in each of the interior 2 double crochets of each of these sets of 4. So we come to the second one and put 2 double crochets in there, 1 and 2. And then we go to the next stitch and put 2 double crochets in there, 1 and 2. Then we skip the next 2, the last and first of the next sets. So pretty easy to see how these are going to stack up. And we're basically going to repeat row 2 for a set number of rows. It depends on what size of sweater you are making. So let's take a look here. If you are making the extra small size, you'd make 38. If you're making the largest size, you'd make 44. So this is the back of the sweater. And see here I did 2 and 2 in that one. So now we go to the next set. So this is the back of the sweater. So it's just one big piece. If you can picture the back of a sweater, right? It's the biggest piece of solid fabric when you're making a cardigan. So after you've made all of these rows, what we'll do is we'll split the rows in half and we'll make one front half and then rejoin and make the other front half. So let's see, I have made 2 and 2 in that one. You can see how they're in the interior 2 stitches there, if you will. We've got one set of stitches left here on our little swatch, so I'll come over here and do these. So there's 1 and 2, and then 1 and 2, and then we skip the last stitch. Remember, we've got 2 stitches left, which is officially part of our repeat, but we don't want to leave these hanging. So we're going to come in and put a double crochet right in that very last stitch. There we go. That's why it's so nice to have it marked. I knew right where to put my hook. And now I can take out that stitch marker and put it in the first stitch of the next row. Again, you'll want to continue repeating row 2 just as I've done until you have the total number of rows needed for the back of the sweater rather. When you've done that, you don't break the yarn. We're going to leave it attached and start making the first front panel. Now, as I said, at this point, we're ready to split the front of our cardigan. We'll do the first half here, and then when we break our yarn, we'll come over here and do the second half on this side. So the way that we have the center handled, rather, where we finish working and then turn and go back, is different depending on the size you're making. So for sizes extra small through 2X, there's one way, and sizes 3X through 6X, there's another version. So you'll, again, want to make sure you have the written pattern so you make sure you're following the instructions for your size. Quickly here, I'm going to go over the small difference. It's just how we handle that interior edge, if you will. So if you're making the smallest 3 sizes, that would be extra small, small, medium large, and extra large 2X. We're going to start this row, and we do start our count over again here with row 1 by working again that double crochet substitute or double crochet chain 3, whatever you like to do to make the first double crochet of your row. All of these stitches here along the side, whether they're chain 3 or chainless starting double crochets, will get seamed together when we do ours, or rather worked into, I should say. They'll get stitched into and then seamed together, so it will be hidden a little bit along the side. There we go. So we've got that first stitch made, and we're going to work basically the same stitch pattern until we get about to the center. So I'm going to go ahead and make one of the repeats here on our small swatch. And of course, the number of repeats, number of times you'll have to do that depends on the size you're making, since they're different stitch counts. But we're going to pretend here on our little swatch that we're making the extra small to 2X size. So I'm going to basically work the repeat a set number of times. And then when I get to where basically my center is going to be, we are going to work 2 double crochets in the next stitch. You'll follow along with written instructions here. You'll be starting on a new repeat, kind of like this one. 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And then we work a double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. So 1 in that stitch and 1 in that stitch. And then we turn and work back the other direction and maintain this sort of separated split right here. So we work that in rows, basically maintaining that same stitch pattern we've done before until you've made that full front panel, which of course needs to be just as long as the back panel, right? We want them to be the same length. Then we break the yarn and come back over here. You see, we worked this row this direction, so when we rejoin for the second panel, we'll rejoin in this stitch right here so that we can maintain that same stitch direction, and then simply work back and forth in rows until we've got that second front panel made. Now, I'm going to pull this back and pretend for a moment that we're actually making the larger sizes, which is the 3X, 4X, and the 5X, 6X. So with that one, because we've got a slightly different stitch count there that we're working on for the back, just the way the numbers worked, we end up working the center a little differently. And for this one, we'll actually stop when we have finished our repeats, and then we stop with 2 double crochets in one of these stitches right here, because we need to split that repeat when we make the 2 sides for our front panels for the larger sizes. Other than that, though, it's exactly the same. We maintain that same stitch pattern until we make the number of rows needed for the size we're making. Okay, so when it is time to add that second panel, there is one more stitch that you'll encounter, and that's the standing double crochet. Again, this is optional. You can join and chain 3, or join and make a stacked single crochet, whatever method you prefer. Here's how I like to do it. I'm going to start by putting a slip knot on my hook, and then I'm going to yarn over, and you'll see I've got a grip on the tail end here in these 2 fingers. Again, I don't want this loop to spin around on my hook. I want it to stay nice and steady. So then I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook right in the next stitch. No matter what size you're making, you'll work into the next unworked stitch. Again, you'll want to lay it out and make sure we're working that same direction. We go into that stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, then we yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Sometimes this can be a little tricky, and I'll use my other fingers, as you can see here, to pull that on through, but now it's nice and attached. Then we can continue crocheting our second side according to the instructions. Once you've got the 2 fronts made, and they're as long as the back, then it's time to move on to making the edging that we work all the way around our piece. This is going to make the seaming a whole lot easier. So after you finish crocheting that second side, make sure not to break your yarn. If you do, you can re-add it, but it's just easier to go ahead and leave it attached. So for our edging, we're going to chain 1, and I like to go ahead and turn, and we're going to single crochet evenly around our entire piece. And that's pretty simple. We're going to work 1 single crochet in each step, or each stitch rather. So I'm going to go ahead and get my stitch marker and mark that first stitch here of our edging. And then I'm simply going to single crochet in each one of these double crochets that I've made until I get to the side. Luckily, I have just a small swatch. Yours will be a little bit longer, so if you're working along with your sweater, you'll want to pause and get caught up here. until we come right to this corner. Oop, there we go. And then right in that last stitch. Now I'm going to reuse this stitch marker here to mark the corner that I'm going to make. And to make this corner, I am going to chain 2. You can see we're at a corner of our piece. It's where a corner of the sweater is going to be. We want to chain 2, like so. Then we'll put our stitch marker right around those 2 chains so that they're easy to find next time. And now we're going to spin our work a little bit and crochet along the side. As we crochet along the side, we want to work single crochets rather in the side of each row. This is what I find lays really nice and flat for me. Your gauge may be different. Your tension levels, the way you hold the hook, if you're using a different yarn, it may affect this. So if you find that you need to add an extra stitch or delete one to make it lay nice and flat, do whatever you need to do. Just make sure you keep track because we're going to want to have the same number of stitches on each side and along the front and the back. So if possible, I do strongly recommend that you do try to stick to 2 single crochets in the side of each row. So this is how I do it. I'm going to kind of just look at our stitch, look at our double crochet here, whether it's a chainless starting double crochet or a chain 3 or stacked single crochet or a standard double crochet. You'll see that there's sort of 2 halves of it. There's the top half of the stitch and the bottom half of the stitch, sort of above and below the yarn over. So visually, I just sort of split it right in half and I put 1 double crochet in the top half and then 1 double crochet in the bottom half. And it's just a matter of sort of seeing where your hook wants to go in. I try to always have 2 strands above my hook when I insert it in the stitch. But you can, again, do whatever you like. I always say working into the edge is just as much art as it is science. And we do want to maintain our stitch count, so that's the science for this one. But where you insert your hook, where you think it looks good, that is the art. So you should make it look however you desire. So as you're crocheting yours, this is going to be a really long row because, of course, it's going to go across along the side of the front panel and then all the way down along the side of the back. Again, I've just got my little swatch here, so it's a little faster for our demo. But eventually, of course, you can see I had a little extra chain there. Let me get that out of the way. We are going to come down to another corner here. This would be the back bottom corner. So now we want to chain 2 again. 1, 2, and I'll grab another stitch marker and put that stitch marker right around our 2 chains. And now we're going to single crochet along the foundation chain, which would be right along the bottom hem at the back of your sweater. So for this, we again want to double crochet in each foundation chain, but you're going to want to watch your stitch counts a little bit with this one because it can get a little bit tricky just because we have sort of that lacy pattern right there on row 1. So what I like to do is really take a look. And the main thing to remember as you start out is that we've got a double crochet here, but then we skipped a stitch before we began our repeat. So we want to work a single crochet right into the bottom, if you will, of that stitch. And here you get to make a choice. Do you want to work into the individual chains or do you want to work into the chain spaces? Totally up to you. Personally, I tend to be a big fan of working into the chain space. It's a lot easier than trying to stick my hook into the little chain. But you can do whichever you prefer. Whatever you do decide to do, try and keep it consistent all the way across the row because that's what you'll notice is when one sticks out, not whichever way you decided to go. Then, of course, we can just crochet in the bottom of each of those stitches. When we come to a chain 2 space, we can work into the individual chains or simply work 2 double crochets in that space. Again, it's totally up to you. We're just going to work our way right across here. Here comes my yarn. I need to pull up a little bit more. Now, the main reason I really wanted to go through this with you guys, because it is just single crochets, and I think you've got the idea, is because I want to point out how easy it is to miss one of those spaces, especially when we get to the second end, or the end, if you will, of the bottom hem here. As I approach, remember when we made our first one, when we first began, we skipped 4 stitches and we worked into the 5th stitch. That means there's 4 stitches here and they counted as a double crochet and a skipped stitch. So we want to make sure to work as if there's a chain space there and then work into that next chain. So I actually like to count back 1, 2, 3 so I can make sure I get the one that is officially the bottom of that stitch. And I can put my single crochet right there. And then of course it's time for a chain 2 again. And get another stitch marker here and put my stitch marker around that. And then I will crochet up the second side. Then when I get to this corner, chain 2, double crochet across, or excuse me, single crochet up here, chain 2, single crochet across, chain 2, and I'll meet you as we come right back here where those two sides split. All right, so we started right here, worked across, chain 2, worked down, chain 2, worked across the back, chain 2, worked up the side, chain 2, worked across the other front panel, chain 2, and worked up the inside, but now we're right here where our two sides split. So let's take a closer look at where we are at. Now you can see I've put my first single crochet in the top of this double crochet right here, but it's the one worked into this stitch and this one is worked into this stitch. So what I like to do is rather than just single crochet here and then jump over and single crochet here, is actually work a single crochet 2 together to bring these sides together really nicely. So for this very last stitch on this side and the first stitch on that side, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook right there and yarn over and pull up a loop and then jump right on over to the next side. There we are, which would actually be our second panel. Get in there. Well, there we go. Yarn over and pull up a loop. And then, of course, yarn over and pull through all 3. And then I can go back to single crochets. Now on my little swatch here, of course, we're almost there. I'm working up our second front panel. I've just got 2 more stitches to make. And of course, you'll have quite a few more on your full-sized guy. So there we go. So now I have worked up that side. So we want to do the same thing. We want to do our chain 2, 1, 2, and then we can slip stitch to that first single crochet that we made of the round. Then you can go ahead and break your yarn. All right, so now that we've got the edging made, it is ready to start our assembly where we're going to fold our sweater and do our side seaming. So I like to sort of lay it out here so we've got the wrong side up and the bottom of the sweater back here and our 2 front pieces going up here away from us. And then you're simply going to fold. We can see right here where our split was, and we can just fold it right on over. Now, of course, my sample here is quite small, but you get the idea. We bring those long fronts down over the back, and voila. Now we've got more of a sweater shape. We've got our neck opening here, there's the back of the sweater, and here will be the sides and where our sleeves go. All right, since I've got just a little swatch here, I'm actually going to use our back hem to sort of demonstrate our seaming. Work with me here. We're using our imagination now. We're folding it over that this is the side seam. So what I like to do is right away, of course, we're going to match up our chain 2s here. We can take one of those stitch markers and send it right through both of them. Let me get that other one out of the way. There we go. And then you're going to want to take your time and match up your stitches. So you can see there's 1 to 1 there, 1 to 1 there. I like to do every 4 or 5 or so. And just send another stitch marker right through there. It might seem excessive. You say, oh, I'm going to keep track as I start sewing with my sewing needle, but it's very easy to lose track of exactly where you are and end up missing a stitch and have it uneven at the end. So really take your time and match up your stitches one by one. Now, what you're going to do is sew a 24-inch seam on each side, starting at the bottom. And this is true for all the sizes. It's just the way this pattern worked out, one of the fun little quirks of math. So what you're going to want to do is pull out your tape measure and measure 24 inches up, starting at that chain 2 section and going all the way up towards the sleeve. You don't want to sew all the way to the top or you won't have any place to stick your arms out, right? This is going to be our armhole. So this is another place where you can customize. Of course, you can choose how long you want to make it, how wide you want to make it, but now you can also choose how big you want that armhole to be. If you are someone who prefers your arms a little closer fitting, then you can go a little further. Add a couple inches, add 1 inch, half an inch, whatever makes you comfortable. I recommend that you get out another sweater you own that you really love the fit of, and you can use that as a guide as well. If you're someone who prefers a little more arm room, only sew to 22 or 23 inches. It's totally arbitrary, and this is a great place for you to customize and get exactly the fit you want. Once you've got those stitches all lined up, and I like to put, a different colored stitch marker right at the end of where my 24 inches ends up being, then you're going to cut a separate length of yarn. And I like to go about twice as long as I need that seam to be. Then you can go ahead and put that on a yarn needle. And we're going to use the mattress stitch to seam from that bottom edge up till where we want to stop and leave it open for our armhole. So here is how I like to do that. I'm going to take my yarn here on my needle, and I'm going to go ahead and move this stitch marker out of the way since I know this is where we're beginning. Now, this is a chain 2 corner, so I know that this chain right here is the one along this side. So I'm going to come from behind that chain with my yarn needle and pull through. Now, I don't want to pull it all the way through or I'll have to start over again. Happens all the time though. So I'm going to hold on to that a little bit and then come over to the other side and find the matching stitch and come from behind again with my yarn needle. And I'll just gently pull that so I don't accidentally pull my end all the way through. Then I'm going to go back and forth doing the same thing. So now I'll go back to the other side and come from underneath with my yarn needle and pull that through. Then I go to the other side, come from behind, and pull that through. Now that I've got a couple of stitches on there, I can pull down on my ends and pull those nice and tight. So we're just going to work back and forth up our seam until we've sewn 24 inches or whatever length you'd like to customize it for. As for handling the ends, we weave them in just like we weave in all the other ends on our projects. After you've got your side seam made on both sides and you've got your armholes left open, then it's time to make another customization decision. Are you going to leave it as a vest? Are you going to add long sleeves, short sleeves, straight sleeves, or tapered sleeves? All of these are viable options. If you'd like to leave it as a vest, you can stop right here and move on to the border around the body, or you can add a matching border to the body along the sleeve as well, following the same instructions as you do for the body itself. Of course, you just won't have any corners to deal with. If you prefer a short sleeve, you can follow either the tapered or the straight instructions and just stop when you have the length desired. Both the tapered and the long sleeves start with row 1 exactly the same. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you right now. I'm going to pull up a little bit more yarn here from my skein. And then we want to take a look at our sleeve opening. And we're going to join with a single crochet to the first stitch after the seam. So let's take a look. You can see right here is the last stitch that I sewed into for the seam. So this is the stitch I'm going to join to. So if you'd like, you can go ahead and mark that with a stitch marker. Then I'm going to prepare my hook. What I want to do now is join with a single crochet. If you prefer, you can join with a slip stitch, chain 1, and single crochet in that first stitch. But here's how I like to do it. I'm going to do it with another standing stitch. Since this one is a single crochet, I'm going to start again with a slip knot on my hook. And I'll hold on to that tail end right there in these fingers, but this time I don't have to yarn over. I can just come right back to my project, get that stitch marker out of the way, insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2. Now I am going to use that stitch marker to mark this first single crochet of the round. There we go. Now we're all set up to continue crocheting right around this yarn opening. So our instructions say to single crochet in the next 9 stitches. Now, I only have a little sample here, so we're going to pretend this is 9 single crochets all made right there. So pretend with me that we've got a total of 10 single crochets made. After that, you half double crochet in the next 10 stitches. So we'll just do a couple. So we'll half double crochet in the next 10 stitches, and then we double crochet until 20 stitches are left. So at this point, you may want to pull up your loop, set your hook aside, and grab another stitch marker and start counting back from the other side. You can see here's where we finished our seam on this side. So we need to count back 20 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, on my little swatch here, I don't have that many. So I'm just going to pick a spot right there and say that represents my 20 stitches. So I can come back here, reinsert my hook, and now I'm just going to double crochet until I get to that stitch marker. This was, believe it or not, I think the simplest way to write it up. It works for all the sizes. And if you adjust the sleeve this way, if you adjust the sleeve length or the arm opening, I should say, by adjusting the seam length along the side, the instructions for the sleeve will still work. So once you get to that stitch marker, you know you've got 20 stitches left. So we're going to half double crochet in the next 10. I'll just do a couple here to represent them, and then single crochet in the last 10. So what this does is it creates a little bit of a cap at the top of our sleeve so it doesn't come straight out from our sweater. This helps create a little bit more of a taper underneath the armpit, if you will, and just creates a really nice shaping for our sleeve so it's not as blocky. We don't usually stand around with our arms sticking straight out unless we're modeling our sweaters, right? So once we've gotten all the way around here for round one, what we're going to do is join and turn. Now, the sleeves are worked in turned rounds. This keeps the seam straight right under the armpit. If you've crocheted in the round before, you've probably noticed your seam heading off in one direction or the other, depending on if you're right or left-handed. But by turning it, we'll be able to keep our seam nice and straight and right underneath our sleeve. So before I do the join, I am going to take the time to put a stitch marker in my last stitch of the round as well. So when you're working in turned rounds, then or joined rows, I've heard them called that as well. When you're using this technique, you really want to keep a stitch marker in the first and last stitch of each round because it's really easy to mess up where you start working once you've turned. So let's go ahead and do that together. I've got those stitch markers in there. Now I can join with a slip stitch to that first stitch. I'm not going to take that stitch marker out because now I'm going to turn and work from the inside of the sleeve. So you can see how with the slip stitch and everything, it can be really confusing to see where I would start working. That's where that stitch marker comes in super duper handy. So I don't recommend you stitch it or skip it rather, even if you're an experienced crocheter. So for round two, I'm going to start with a chain one and then single crochet right in that first stitch. So now I will move that stitch marker on up to this new first stitch of the round. And for this round, we single crochet in the first 5 stitches. So there's 1. We're going to say that's 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to say that's all of them. Then we half double crochet in the next 10 stitches. So you would have half double crochet in the next 10 stitches and then double crochet around until you get to 15 stitches remaining. So again, if I was making a full-size sweater here, not this little guy, you would want to take the time to pull out your hook and count back 15 stitches from the other end to make sure we know where to stop our double crochets. But on our little sample here, we're just going to keep it going. After we've gotten to those last 15 stitches, of course, we have 10 half double crochets, and then we finish it up with 5 single crochets in the last 5 stitches. Now you can see you should end up in that last marked stitch. And once you've worked into it, that's when I tend to make that stitch marker, or move that stitch marker rather, into my new last stitch. So now we've got our first and last stitch marked again before we join and turn for the next row. So I can go ahead and do that now and turn. So for row 3 or round 3, all our odd numbered rounds we're going to be on the outside of the sleeve, and the even numbered rounds will be working from the inside of the sleeve. Now, for round 13, or excuse me, for round 3, that's when we really have the differences depending on what sleeve style you are making. So if you're making the tapered sleeve, then you've got one set of instructions. If you're making the straight sleeve, you've got another set of instructions. And again, if you're making a short sleeve, you just stop making whichever style you want when you've got the length you want. So rounds 3 through 17 of the tapered style are as follows. We are going to work a chainless starting double crochet or double crochet substitute right in that first stitch. So again, it's super handy to have that stitch marker in there so I know where I need to insert my hook and make that first stitch. And again, you can chain 3, stacked single crochet, whatever method you prefer. Now I am going to move this stitch marker up now that I've made that first double crochet of our round, like so. And then I double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. So we insert our hook in the next stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over again, go to the next stitch, pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through all 3 to finish. Then we double crochet all the way around until 3 stitches remain. Luckily, I've got just a few stitches here. You'll have, of course, quite a few more if you want your arm to actually fit through it, right? Going all the way around here. Oh, let's see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left, so I'll double crochet this one. Pull up a little bit more yarn, and now we can see there are 3 stitches left on this side. We've got marked 1, 2, 3. So we're going to double crochet in the next 2. Same way we did before. standard double crochet decrease, and then double crochet in that very last stitch. I'm going to go ahead and pull that stitch marker out of my way for a moment, finish that double crochet, and pop it right back into the top of that stitch. Then I join and turn and do it again. So that is our row 3 repeat. That takes us all the way until we're about ready for our cuff on the tapered sleeve style. Now for the straight sleeve style, it's the exact same thing, but we don't have those decreases. Just double crochet in each stitch around for a nice straight sleeve all the way to the cuff. So for whatever sleeve style you end up making, eventually you're going to want to come to some sort of cuff. If you're doing the short sleeve, you may not want a cuff. You may want a simpler edging. But for the long sleeves, here's how I like to do it. And for both sleeve styles, this starts in round 18. And we simply chain 1, and then we work a front post double crochet around the first stitch. So let me go ahead and move my stitch marker out of the way here. And for a front post double crochet, what we're going to be doing is working around the post of the stitch rather than into the top of the stitch. So we yarn over, come from the front along the side of the stitch, and bring our hook up on the other side of the stitch. So you can see our hook ran along the back of the fabric, and now the post of that whole stitch is in front of our hook. Now we're going to bring our yarn right across the front of the stitch, yarn over, and pull that loop up. And pull it up all the way and clear of that post. You can see all my loops are nice and clear. Then we finish the double crochet as usual. Pull through 2 and pull through 2. Then we work a back loop only half double crochet in the next stitch. Back loop only half double crochet. That means we look at the top of our stitch and it's got the 2 loops, right? The front loop is the one closest to us. The back loop is the one furthest away. So I'm going to go under just that back loop and make a half double crochet. Standard half double crochet otherwise. That is our repeat. We work another front post double crochet around the next stitch. So we come to the next one, go in on one side, pop out on the other, bring our yarn across the front, pull up our loop, and finish our double crochet, and then back loop half double crochet in the next stitch. So we just repeat those 2 stitches for our repeat. Front post double crochet, back loop only half double crochet. Repeat those 2 stitches all the way around and join with a slip stitch for round 18. For rounds 19, 20, and 21, the exact same thing. At this point, we're no longer turning. We did our turning for rounds 1 through 17 of the sleeve. Rounds 18 on, we no longer turn. We keep working on the outside of the sleeve. So we keep building up this sort of ribbed look in our cuff until we get to the final round, round 22, where we simply half double crochet in the back loop only of each stitch around. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like on the finished sweater. All right, so here you can see the finished cuffs of my sweater. You can see we worked from the outside and we got that great ribbed look with the front post stitches and the back loop only half double crochets. And here you can see that final round in the back loop only of the half double crochet. Again, feel free to customize. If you don't want to use the back loops, you don't have to. If you'd like a different cuff, be sure to put on whatever you like best. So the next thing to do is add your front opening, border, and hem. So this is just a few rounds worked all the way around the outside of the sweater, across the bottom, up the inside edge that matches the cuff. So it's the same stitches. If I pull this up here, you can see it's this exact same stitches as we made for our cuffs. We mimic that look right here. So to make this, we join to any stitch here along the bottom hem. I tend to pick one sort of near the seam, but you can pick whichever one you like, and just start working back loop only half double crochets all the way around. And you're going to do these rounds all from the right side of the sweater, so the outside of the sweater. So we go all the way around, back loop only half double crochets. Now, when we come to the corner chain 2s down here, if I pull this up here, you can see hopefully we've got 5 double crochets worked into the corner. And then as we come around and do more of those rounds with the back loop, the post stitches rather, and the back loop only half double crochets, you just want to maintain the stitch pattern as you work around those corners. So we work all the way around just as we made those cuffs. And you can see how it comes up right here. We've got, let me pull it around here. Big sweater, big crochet duster. It's quite long. We talked about customization. Of course, you can make it as long or as short as you'd like. I made it long because I haven't made a long sweater yet. But if you prefer shorter sweaters, just cut off some rows from the front and the back. Just make sure they're the same. But here you can see we've worked right across. Where's our two sides split? There's our single crochet two together. We just treated it like any other stitch and worked all the way around. So it's really just at the two front corners where you've got those 5 double crochets in the corner so that we're able to make that turn. Otherwise, it's just smooth sailing rather, all the way around. Easier done than said. So the last thing to do is, of course, add the pockets. And the pockets are just straight pieces that are added on afterwards. And like the sleeves and the length, totally optional, totally available for you to add, not add, place where you want them. I wanted 2 pockets right in front at about arm length, but you might not want them there. You might like your pockets on the inside. You might prefer the sweater without pockets at all. These, again, are totally optional. I got a lot of feedback when I was showing the sweater in progress about whether or not to add pockets. Most people like them, but some people want them on the inside and some people don't want them at all. All of these are totally fine. But it starts out, it's exactly like the back of the sweater, just much smaller. So we just work even in that same, let me put my hand in here so you can see it a little easier. We've got that double crochet, 2 double crochets, 2 double crochets, the exact same double V stitch pattern we were doing throughout the rest of the sweater. And then we just work an edging around it and sew it right to the front of the sweater or the inside of the sweater or wherever you want it, going right through both layers. And of course, be sure to leave the top of the pocket open. But you can totally customize these. Again, put them different places. If you want them bigger, smaller, you can do that. As long as it fits on the sweater, you're all set. And that's how to crochet the Shell Stitch Crochet Duster. Remember to follow along with the written pattern and make sure that you're using the numbers for the size that you're making. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.